Caring for a loved one with dementia can often feel like navigating a storm. The unpredictable behaviors, the emotional toll, the constant worry, it can leave you feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. But what if you had the tools to find your calm in all the chaos? Today, we're exploring practical, stress reducing strategies specifically designed for dementia caregivers. From mindful moments to building a supportive network, join us as we chart a course toward a more peaceful and manageable caregiving journey. Imagine a loved one slowly slipping away, their personality changing, their behavior unpredictable. That is the reality for many families facing frontotemporal dementia, a devastating brain disease. It affects language, behavior, and personality. But amidst the heartbreak, there are stories of resilience, love, and even creative awakening. Today, we explore these stories with actress and filmmaker Katie Prentice, whose new movie, Wake Up Maggie, shines a light on the challenges and triumphs of caregiving in the face of FTD. Join us as we delve into the often overlooked disease, learn how others have coped, and discover how one woman is turning personal experience into art with the power to heal and inspire. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. I appreciate all of the time you give to me every week to get a little bit of uplift and interesting stories. And I've got one of those for you today. With me is Katie Prentice. She is an actress, a filmmaker, and she was also a caregiver for her mom who had frontotemporal dementia, which we've started talking more about lately because FTD is not talked about enough. So thanks for joining me, Katie.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So why don't we start off with your background? You've always been an actress, is that correct?
That is not correct.
Uh-oh, my
It's all
research is
good.
flawed.
No, it's good because I think so many people in this industry like have acted a lot of their life. Like they maybe started in high school or college and pursued the career for the rest of their lives. Sometimes it takes a turn, whatever. But for me, it's a different story. Should we get into it?
Sure.
Okay. So my life took a massive turn. And it all started with my mom's diagnosis with FTD, frontotemporal dementia. My mom was 62 when she got her diagnosis. I was in my 30s and 40s during those years of caring for her. And the interesting thing about that is you have this, or I had this grief journey, this caregiving journey with my mom that, makes your life. I say there's a contraction that happens. You tend to like have to go inward a little bit to process all your feelings, but you're also going inward with your life because you're not able to do as much as you normally do. So
Mm-hmm.
I was managing, trying to do the normal stuff in my life and world. And after my mom passed was actually when I first started acting. And it's kind of a weird turn of events, but I think the way I look at it now is there's nothing like death and processing grief that makes you realize how short life is. And if you let it, will help you to choose to live more fully. And for me, that's what happened. I was like, oh, I really want to try new things and I want to feel alive and I want to explore. And so that led me to audition for my first role, booked it, and then ever since then, I've been so passionate about this career.
That's awesome. So I talked to a lot of caregivers who I call them caregivers, turn creatives.
Ah,
They write books or courses or make apps or do podcasts or,
yes.
there's like a whole host of things. Many people logically, the caregiving journey is over and they move on, which is great. Some of us
Mhm.
take it for, take a little turn with it.
Yeah.
So how long did your mom live with FTD?
My mom, between her diagnosis and death, it was 6 years. So it was pretty fast. Um, Feels long at times, but yeah, it was 6 years.
So do you have any was what did you discover like about yourself while you were caring for your mom? 'Cause Not a question I've asked anybody that I can recall.
Mm. I mean, so much. I think so much of when I look back at my time with mom, especially the last few years when she lived with us here in Oregon, part in our house, and then we had to place her into a home. I think that I realized I was in crisis mode. I realized after losing her that I was in trauma. And I don't think I was aware of that at all when I was in it. Um, I was surviving. I was trying to hold things together. I was not, there's so many ways where I'm really proud of my choices and decisions, and other ways where I think, oh, I wasn't able to do as much as I would have thought that I could have done. Or I wasn't as able to be present in the way that I thought I would have been able to. And I think what it's taught me now in hindsight is how much like self-compassion is required. And one of the biggest lessons I think about is when I feel tempted towards feeling guilty or having regrets, I have to reframe those things and remember like a regret is just a longing to love someone more. When it comes to this kind of scenario. And the most comforting thing that I think about is if if my mom were around, she would be the first to forgive me and the first to be compassionate toward me. And I think taking that into myself and thinking, well, if she can give me that, I can give that to myself. And so it's like learning how to reparent ourselves and love ourselves through the eyes of a good mom. So,
You think it's hard to be present while you're caregiving because you have like it's almost more than dual roles, but you're the
mm,
person responsible for everything and you're the daughter. It's just I feel like you're torn in multiple
yeah,
ways. And that I feel like that's what made it difficult to just be in the moment with my mom
yeah,
more,
yeah,
which I really would have appreciated now that
yeah.
she's gone. It's like you look back and like, just trying to manage everything. And it wasn't like
Yes.
control freak, which is a problem with our family. A lot of
Yeah.
control freaks. But it was just trying to navigate and manage everything she was going through and I was going through. And I admire and appreciate the people who can just go with the flow. I guess that is not my
So
personality.
much. No, I think you're spot on. Like, I think presence is one of the most challenging things because I remember thinking, like, the past just makes me like grieve because I was missing, especially with FTD, I was missing so much. Like, her personhood was just like gone. Um, so I was grieving who she was, but I was also terrified. If I look toward the future, I'm terrified about what's to come. And so I thought neither of those things are really helpful to my mental health. Being present is the key, but it is so hard because you're feeling so many things. I remember two things. One is my youngest kiddo would sometimes join me in visiting with mom, and he was really little. He's like maybe 6 or something. I can't remember. But, she would just hold her arms out, nonverbal, but just hold her arms out and he'd hug her. And then he'd turn around and go play and she'd do it again and he'd hug her. This is like one day. And I thought he's so capable of being just present in the moment with her. And it was such a visual for me. I also remember thinking, I think caregivers are so special, like those who are in this industry of caring for our loved ones, because they're able to be present with them because they're not grieving a past. They're not grieving the loss that we are. And I always felt like that's such a gift to just know someone in this moment. Like my mom was only who my mom was in that moment to them. And that was like a freedom that they had that I was challenged to try and have.
That brings up a memory. My mom was in memory care for the
Mm,
last 3 years of her life. And whenever she would have like a change in her disease or like a progression of the disease and things would change, a lot of the caregivers would be like my mom she slept through the night really well.
mm,
But there was a period of time where she was getting up at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which is not something she would have done. She would
right.
have like gotten up to use the bathroom and gone back to bed. but she was
Mhm.
kind of like wandering around. She'd come out and just sit with them, and they would
Yeah.
make comments like, well, this is just not like your mom. And I would laugh because I'm like, yeah, actually it is. You didn't grow up with her as a teenager,
Yeah.
okay? Which
Yeah.
would make them laugh. Like
That's
when she was
cute.
getting ornery, at the
Yeah.
end, she would scratch people and draw blood. And
Mm.
that was embarrassing and frustrating because I knew that my mom was a difficult person sometimes if you pissed her off, but
Yeah.
she wasn't physically abusive.
Right.
And so it was really hard to like grasp that. And they couldn't prevent her from scratch. Like she tried to scratch me one day. So I just grabbed her wrists and looked at her and I said, oh no, we're not doing that. And
Yeah.
that was the moment where if looks could kill, I would have just been dust.
Ah,
Because man, she was like, whoo, that was ugly. And
yeah.
unfortunately, I didn't I'm stronger than she was, but I didn't have to hold on to her very tight. And I
Mm.
like you said, thank God for those caregivers because she and I were about to have blows or something ugly. And we were sitting outside the care home and I just walked her back inside and said, I will see you tomorrow, which was always what I said. It didn't matter if I was coming back in a week or whatever, and
Mhm.
left. And they said that was the funniest thing they ever saw because they're like, we knew she pissed you off. And whew, and like, she's always so sweet to us. I'm like,
Yeah, you're like,
not your
sure.
mother.
That's
And
great.
it was really interesting to see their perspective or to get their perspective.
Yes,
So,
it is
it's,
valuable that you both, like, you come with the history of knowing who she's always been, but they come into this present moment with freedom.
yeah, which I think that's a blessing because then you don't have
Yeah,
one, you're not grieving what should have been.
right.
It took me a while to get over. So, like, after my dad passed away and she was in memory care, it was like, it's hard not to be angry at the world
Totally.
because she should have been doing all the things that she wanted to do that my dad never
Yeah.
cooperated with, like traveling and hanging out with the grandkids. Because my daughter is the oldest of three. My niece is 14 years younger. So there was
Mhm.
plenty of,
Yeah.
time to spend with my niece and my nephew. My daughter probably would have hung out with her grandmother a little bit, but, as college age students, we're not hanging
Yeah.
out with grandparents too much. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it
was there
really
any,
robs them of that presence, and those future expectations are part of the grief process too. Yeah.
yeah, I always felt badly because my daughter got all the good years with my mom.
Yeah.
My niece was born in 2005, and by that point, my mom was already pretty close to middle stages of the Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
And, by the time she's 5 or 6, when she can start having memories of grandma, my mom was pretty far along in the disease. So yeah, my niece got gypped. My mom got gypped. This is the worst part of the disease is that it
Yeah.
robs everybody.
Everyone.
Did you
Yeah.
learn any like techniques for being present while you were caring for your mom? Because like I'm like not good at meditating. That's my goal for
Mm.
2025 is to like at least listen to like happy morning meditations before I get up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully that will do something good for me.
Yeah. No, I don't know that I learned anything life-changing back then. I think that I think what comes to mind is I was always looking for like an activity I could bring. And so like I would do like our nails or, try and read to her. But often she would just get up in the middle of me reading or whatever and walk out. So I think that if anything I've learned more now, I think like trying to heal from so much like crisis and trauma like that gives you a different level of awareness. And I think that I tended to live my life um with a lot of self-denial, a lot of people pleasing, like very attentive to everyone around me and not really thinking about my needs. And so that would carry through all the way through caregiving, which is like caregiving will like really lay into that. If you're already like that and then you caregive, it's like crazy. But I think for me, presence is just like a growing awareness of like my body, my nervous system, like what's going on. It's like staying attuned to like the world around me, not just staying in my head of all the things that's spinning up there. So I think it's a practice, but I definitely think there's lots of different ways that you can get there and grow in that for sure.
That makes sense. One of the
Yeah.
things I've become really acutely aware of is that, when they say, like, when a spouse dies, don't make any major decisions for a
Mm,
year, which I'm trying to, like, remind my aunt of that because my uncle
mm,
died in February and she's been pretty much deciding. I think she knew what she wanted to do after he was gone.
mhm,
His health wasn't great for the last, I don't know, seems like forever. And but there's a part of me that just wants to be like, nope, just chill. Because after my mom died, so my mom died at the start of the pandemic,
mm,
and we had downsized our overly large house with a mortgage that was not always the easiest thing to pay as two self-employed people. And I wasn't 100% happy with that decision, but we lived on a golf course that they closed. And it was
mm.
like, this kills me. This real estate
Ah,
decision kills me
yeah.
because we did not want to get upside down on this house again.
Yeah.
We decided, I finally said, you know what, the hell with it. It's just a house. Let's sell it. That
Yeah.
was January of 2020. Really wish we'd waited till June. Financially would have been so much better. But, you know, there was
Nobody
other
knew. Nobody
no,
knew.
it could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
Seriously, could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
And so we moved to a new location. There's just decisions that I made that,
Yeah.
you know, I really, they weren't 100% right. They're not 100% wrong, but they weren't 100% right. And a lot of them were made because it's like, I just don't have the emotional bandwidth to, like, battle through this idea or discuss it slash argue with somebody else about it.
Yeah.
So,
I
that's,
relate to that. I think so much of, I don't know, but it all depends on like how we are when it comes to like crisis and our emotions. I know for me, it's easier to jump to an activity that fills my time and makes me busy because it's a way of avoiding like some of that processing and sitting with my feelings. So I'm with you. Like I would have probably been like, let's move. That sounds
yeah.
great because I'm going to be so slammed, like packing up boxes and painting walls and stuff that I won't have to think about all this stuff. And for me, that's like a type of avoidance that I realized like in my healing journey, which I lost my mom 8 years ago. So I have some years on you with that. And I think the more time that goes by, the more I realize, oh, that's what I was doing. This was part of grief. Me like being
Hmm.
a spaz about something, you know? So I'm not saying your decisions were made like that, but I would have done those things for those reasons without realizing, without awareness.
I think I wanted different, new, less stress.
Yeah.
And so my mom died March 31st, 2020. Our oldest golden retriever died November
Ugh,
25th, 2020. And my paternal grandmother died April 6th, 2021. So that
horrible.
pandemic couple of
Yeah.
years really sucked.
Yeah.
And we were blessed. Nobody lost jobs. Nobody got sick. I did not get any COVID until July of 2024. Really frustrating. Thought I was, like, bulletproof,
You're
I
like,
guess.
yeah.
I work from home. I know I don't catch COVID over Zoom. No, my husband brought it home. Um, so it's just like, and my daughter's immune compromised. So it's like
Oh,
we had a
that's
lot
serious.
of blessings.
Yeah.
And, it was like, okay, we'll just, muster through. Like, I
Yeah.
have nothing to really complain about. And I don't know. I'm not sure that trying to rise above and be like the positive, hey, life could be
Hmm.
so much worse.
Right.
It's like, I think dealing with my mom through COVID would have been 10 times worse than her dying. And,
Yeah.
it's just like, but I don't feel like I had, like, appropriate closure because we never had a service because, Alzheimer's is really
Right.
great at making families estranged from each other. And my dad is interned at a military cemetery, which totally not my mom. I think
Ugh.
she'd kind of want to be with him, but she also kind of wanted to be scattered.
Mm.
So none of that's happened. So it's just like, ugh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the newness and the choices and the different haven't really happened, and that's really frustrating. So I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But I could have. worked on the same things in our old hometown. Although
Yeah.
there's some nice things about living in the Sierra foothills. So there's days when it's like, somebody will say, well, you just don't like it up here. I'm like, that's not true. There's
Yeah.
things I like and there's things I don't like. And the same thing can be said for where I used to live. So I don't know.
And
It's
like you take your grief and your healing with you. So it's not like it's like you're going to be struggling and having all sorts of heavy emotions no matter where you live. So it may not be about the place you live, but it is interesting that you did move to a place after all of that because it'd be easy to attach the negative feelings to that as the circumstance when really it's just probably grieving and healing from everything you've lost.
yeah,
But don't
it's
you
that.
think that like it's so interesting because I think there's so much about grief and this process of losing someone like that and multiple people is you have this like deep visceral awareness of how little we actually control in this world. And
Mm-hmm.
then you add COVID and you add all these other things. It's like we we've learned like we cannot control all of this. Like even getting COVID, you think maybe I'm doing all the right things and I don't get it, but then you get it and you're like, oh well, I guess it's invisible. I can't control it. I think it's so easy to I think one of the things I learned is like I wanted so badly to control my mom's dementia and to like get rid of it and not have that be in my part of in our lives. But I had to move to acceptance of that because I thought I could tear this house apart just with my fingers. I was so mad.
Mm-hmm.
But that I could do that whole thing. I could spend days and weeks and months doing that to what end? It would still not change anything about the circumstances that my mom and I were in. And so it really taught me a lot about like, okay, so we can move into the things we can control. And like selling a house is whether it's the right decision or not, it is something you can control. And I think that that gives us a sense of like, of being or security that being in the disease and grief makes us feel so unattached and floaty. Um,
It actually
anyway.
makes sense. No, it
Mhm.
makes perfectly good sense because I do frequently feel very detached. It's like, we moved, we've got neighbors, like our neighbors that used to live two doors down, they also moved to the same town.
Mm,
And we kind of joked like, hey, would you like feel weird about it if we followed you? Like, oh no, that'd be great. And then they moved up here because a lot of their families up here. So they're very, very involved with their family.
yeah.
They have 5,000% better retirement than I will ever have.
Mm,
The, the saga of being self-employed. And so
right.
they're going and they're doing and things. And it's like, we don't do things with each other. And it's
Um,
frustrating. And it's like, I know they're spending time with their family. That's good. But it's like, I get, tweaked
yeah.
that they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they were our COVID bubble. We'd go to the
Oh,
yogurt shop and get yogurt and stand 8 feet
yeah.
apart in the parking lot and chat. And, then we
Ugh,
got brave and they'd come to the house and we'd sit out in the yard. So it was like
yeah.
all
Yeah.
those early COVID things. And then it's like, we had gotten together, I don't know, like Aprilish, May, something like that,
Mm,
and didn't hear from him. And I'm like thinking about them all the time and stressing, like, did we say something? Are we not friends anymore? And so I
mhm,
finally texted them, like, how the hell has it been 4 months since we've
mhm.
talked, texted, done anything together? And so they came here, we went there, they came for our Friendsgiving, and then they're like, you don't call us enough. And I'm thinking, well, duh, you don't call us enough.
Yeah.
So it's just part of it's just life. And
Yeah.
I still feel like it's hard to like be part of the world. I love it when I'm out and
Mm,
I'm doing
mhm,
my speaking and all that stuff,
mhm.
but I swear sometimes it's like, oh my God, I have to leave the house.
Yeah. I resonate with that so much because I think COVID gave us all this, the pandemic when we were at home gave us all so much time and the ability to like pull back on our life and start to evaluate, is this what we want? Is this what I want in my life? Because I'm not doing all these things anymore. And so much shifted. Like so many people took that as an opportunity to try something new or to like quit their jobs, like so much shifted. And I think there's also, even though we were all like, that was so hard, I think there's also this sweetness to the fact that you had all this time with those friends, because
Mm-hmm.
like that, because you're choosing a bubble, then you have this like group that you can rely on and count on and like really like connect with. We had this ability to connect on such a deeper level because we all had more time than we've had. And I know for me that really changed a lot in my life. And there's sometimes where I look back and I miss parts of it. Like I miss the ability to just like be silly. It felt almost like college at times. Like I'm hanging out with people just like I did when I was in my 20s. Like, hey, you want to just like go for a walk, you know? And I'm like, normally I'd be running my kids around or something, but I don't know. It's just interesting the shift, and now we're kind of back to normal, and that means like busier, and like we get to go to all the parties and places, but that means we can't be selective anymore.
That
It's
makes
hard.
sense. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
like dwell on that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so your mom passes away and you decide you want to try new things, and that led to acting. How did
Hmm.
you also get into filmmaking? Did they kind of happen simultaneously, or I'll
Yeah,
let you tell that
kind
story.
of. So I auditioned for my first role in 2018 and I booked it. And I thought it might be the type of thing that was like, oh, this is a really cool experience that I'll get to say I did. I'll get to say I was in a movie. How cool. But instead I went to set and I was like really like enamored, like blown away with the whole experience, like taking it all in. I think the biggest thing that struck me is I'd been a solo entrepreneur, portrait photographer for I've been that for 17 years now. So I've worked for myself all these years as a creative, and I go to shoots and I like love interacting with people and stuff, but I'm in charge and I have to direct it all. And there are times where that's lonely, where you don't have anyone to like say, what decision should we make for the business, or how do we want to operate this year with our work? And I I love people. I also love working for myself. I love not having a boss.
Yeah, I can
Um,
relate.
but so being on set, I was like, oh, this is so fascinating because we're all working to tell the same story collaboratively in a supportive environment. This is cool. This is so aligned with so much of my work with cameras and lights, and I was English major. I always say with photo shoots, I'd always say I want to tell your story. So it's already like leaning into that story piece of life. So being on set, blown away, and I walked away that day thinking like, I wonder if I could get away with this again. That was fantastic. So I started looking for any kind of roles or casting notifications I could find. There's a lot of like, most communities have like Facebook groups, or like they might have a college campus that has film as part of the studies, and there might be like student films being made. And so I was looking for any kind of role like that. Most were unpaid, super low budget situations, but I was like, I want to act. I want to learn how to do this more. I want to experience this more. So I dove in. And then within a couple months, I was in acting class because I was like, oh, I need to take this really seriously. I'm going to entrepreneur this. I'm going to figure out the industry. I'm going to figure out what I need and I'm going to make it work. Um, so it wasn't long before I realized, okay, I'm a midlife woman trying to act, and there's about a million or 10 million of us trying to do this. No one's going to be knocking on my door like, "Oh my God, thank you so much for for joining this industry. We have the most fantastic roles for you." In fact, most people my age in the industry already have like a massive resume. So the auditions I'm going to get are going to be like day players where I'm a waitress and get to say, "Would you like another?" And that's it. Or like he went that way and that's it. So my acting coach said, if you really want the roles, create them yourself, like make your own films. That advice kind of it struck a nerve with me, especially because I've already been like built my own business. Like I'm like good with, okay, I'll figure this out. So I made my first film in 2020, 2 years later, during the pandemic. which I'll say this to our conversation. The only reason I was able to make that film at that point was because of the pandemic, because everything was shut down. My kids were home. I didn't have to run them to school all the time. I was running like bonkers. I was doing shoots all the time. Like my schedule was packed. But because of the pandemic, I was at home. I was able to work on the script. And then we filmed this film in our home with a very limited crew with like COVID protocols so we could be safe and responsible. So that happened because of that space opening up for me. Fast forward, I've made 5 short films now that I've written and directed and acted in. And I think that journey has been something that's been it's just been another level to this whole industry for me, like getting to be the creator of the story, not just acting somebody else's story or a role in somebody else's story, but getting to create the roles and the characters and the story that really means so much to me has been an incredible gift. Um, and so, the film that I'm working on is called Wake Up Maggie. It's my first feature-length film, and it's a movie that's so important to me and so dear to me. I'm calling it my mission because I care about it more than anything else, really more than any work I've ever done besides having my kids. Like this movie matters that much to me. And it's just about a journey through midlife, which is what we're talking about, where our own crises and traumas tend to unravel us in ways that are so hard to cope with. But if we let them, they can be for our own good and they can help us become more of the people that we've always been and meant to be. Um, so Wake Up Maggie is watching Maggie move from being able to tightly control her life to getting a call from her estranged sister, that when she decides to answer that call, she realizes there's a lot more going on in Jane's life than she originally thought. So it's just about that whole journey of moving from control to acceptance that we were talking about on your podcast here.
There's a
So,
theme.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Well, I'm just thinking scriptwriter, actress, filmmaker, you're controlling the whole process.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, but that really feeds into the whole control freak narrative that is my life. Because that's probably how
Well,
I would do it.
yeah, it's control. It's also such a deep level of responsibility that I think for me it like brings up, well, wow, I feel like yes, I get to control it, but also I have to control it. Like I'm responsible ultimately for how this goes. So it's very exposing. I think filmmaking and acting is like besides music, it's probably the most public art form. And it's just like, I'm like, everyone thinks they're a film critic and an acting critic. And, we all talk about good and bad acting and good and bad films left and right, but really it's so subjective. But, anyways, it's another soapbox.
Well, so, yeah, that's true. So, do you see a correlation between like all of the control and the ultimate responsibility of creating this film equal to the control and ultimately responsible for your mom's care and well-being? Because that's
Mm.
just immediately popped into my brain when you said that.
Mm. I haven't ever equated it to my caregiving journey to my mom, but it does feel I've very often used the metaphor of like having a child is how this film feels. It's like it is my baby. It is I've like cared for this from conception to now we're filming in February, and then I'll care for it in its post-production, which is like the editing and all the creative stuff that happens after filming. It feels important to me. The control piece is like kind of how you feel about your own kids. It's like when I think about somebody, if somebody wanted to marry my child, I would be like, okay, that's my most precious thing that you're talking about. Like you're gonna take care of them, like you're gonna be good to them and vice versa. Um, I feel the same way about my film. I'm like, I want people to care about it like I do. I want people to love it like I do. I don't want people yeah, anyway, that's enough about that. But yeah, I think that there is that correlation for sure in that regard.
I guess because my daughter is older, it's
Hmm.
like the caregiving part is what popped into my mind because I was like, you're ultimately responsible for every aspect of
Yeah.
this film, the budget, the filming, the
Mhm.
writing, the acting. Like, oh Lord, that sounds like a lot.
It's so
And
much.
they always say that being the actor and the director is really tough.
It is.
Okay. I would
It's
almost think it'd be easier in some respects because you know how you want it.
yeah. I mean, there is part of that. Um, but it's very tough because you have to split your mind in this weird way of like, I'm performing, I'm being in the scene, I'm like fully enveloped in the story to now I'm like stepping outside of it and are we getting the angle and the shot and the light and is the story being told in the same way? So it's like inside and outside of the context in a way. And it's really hard to flip back and forth, especially like in a deeper, more emotional scene, like you're diving into these emotions and you have to come out and like be like, okay, yes, no, let's go with all of that. So it's a very challenging mix, but I think with a really strong team and surrounding myself with like really solid support will be good.
Still getting that comparison to caregiving, especially when you said strong
Team.
team and the
Yeah, that's
support. It's like,
true.
my gosh, I'm never going to be able to look at a movie again without thinking about
I
that.
love that actually. Yeah.
I
It's
think it's beneficial to like see the correlation between caregiving and like
yeah,
other parts of life, like other
for
careers or
sure.
whatever, we want to call them,
Hmm.
because, one of the things that I really try to emphasize to people who are still, neck deep in caregiving is you cannot give up on yourself, your dreams, your
Yeah.
goals, your career
Yeah.
path. Yes, it's all going to change. If you're in school, you're trying to get an advanced degree or something, more education. Yeah, it might take longer. Like you're not going to be
Hmm.
able to go full time, but go part time.
Hmm.
And, you know, you
Yeah.
obviously kept up with your dream and raising kids and juggling everything. Because I know
Hmm.
so many caregivers who, I don't want to say are forced, but because of the lack of options, they feel, and they're not wrong, that the only option they have is to leave their jobs, their careers, and take care of their loved one full time. And
Yeah.
when I know women in their 50s who have done that, and then now they're grieving and they're trying to like put their life back together, trying to like
Yeah.
get a new friend group, get a new job. Like, do I want to still live? It's like too many choices. And I don't know
Yeah.
how to fix those problems. That's why I like to talk to people
Yeah.
like you.
Well, I think
Because
I think so much of it is like it's like that presence and knowing that our current place and time in the world does not have to define our future place and time in the world.
that
And
is
it's
very true.
it's like I think about that with we chose for me to stay at home with our kids when they were young. And those years are so hard because you're just like, can someone else talk to me right now? Like, can I, like, I remember thinking, like, I always felt really grateful to have that time with them. But I also felt like, whoa, I wish I had a job to go to right now. Like, that sounds so nice to get dressed up and leave and think about adult things. Um, I always remember thinking this chapters and seasons. It's chapters and seasons. And this chapter of raising my children feels less about me. It's like less about my moment and more about sacrificial love. What else is sacrificial love? Caregiving.
Caregiving.
And so I think about that all the time is like, there's this whole idea. Think about this. There has to be a contraction before you can expand. So we can talk about that with our lungs. We can talk about that with childbirth. We can talk about the whole world with the ocean tides is contracting and expanding. It's a living organism. And I think that our life has that pattern. I love to think about the ocean waves and the tide in particular with this. So when the tide's pulling back and there's a contraction, whether it be caregiving, healing from grief, there's times where I think, that's like I call it my cocoon phases where I'm just like feel like there aren't enough fuzzy warm blankets in the world for this stage of life where you just want to curl up, you want comfort, you want soothing, you need to watch movies, you need to eat, like all the things. It's a cocooning stage and it's part of healing. And so if you take that time to contract, then you can experience the expansion. None of us are built to expand all the time. So I feel like that helps me so much. Because when my mom was with me and I was in that journey, I was not expanding. I was
Mm-mm.
surviving. And then after I lost her, I was contracting and trying to process what the hell just happened. And so now, 8 years out, I'm making my first movie. There's an expansion happening. I feel growth. I feel like energy, and all of that's a really wonderful, rewarding thing. But I also know there's probably going to be another contraction coming up, and then there'll be an expansion again. And it's all the rhythm that we're living and experiencing. So we don't have to um, hate or feel so burdened by the loss of what happens in the contraction period if we know that there's more to come. That at least gives me hope.
I like that. I guess I'm almost through the contraction period, and hopefully like the expansion or the blooming period is coming.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like, you know, I've made choices in 2024 where it's like, okay, I know this is the direction I want to go, but we're not getting there very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. And I'm doing all these things and spending money and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, is that the right choice? It's like, that's my
Yeah.
biggest challenge post caregiving is really questioning decisions.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to say, well, this is the choice I made. I need to like make the
Yeah.
best of it and continue going forward. So I
Totally.
like the idea of expansion or blooming. So I'm going to focus on the fact that I'm just about to bloom.
I love that. And I think you'll know when it's coming. It's like, I definitely feel like I force things sometimes when it's like, oh, well, the energy's not really matching. It's like, it feels like you're forcing it. It's like grinding. Whereas like when it's like this a time of expansion, it just kind of feels like things fall into their place. Um, yeah. And I think like every decision we make in the past is like, it's the decision we made given the information we had at that point, and in that way it was what we knew to do. And
Mm-hmm.
um and even if it was like a really poor decision, it still is the thing that we needed to process through to get to where we are today.
That is true.
That compassion thing of looking back and being like, yeah, I don't love the decision now. Like, I don't love where it ended me up. I don't love like that something I did cause hurt or something like that. But like, I was hurting when I made that decision. And I can look back and go, oh, that's why I did that. Wow, that was really rough. And I now know to lean into like processing my feelings in a different way. It's like things like that. It's like that self compassion and forgiveness of like gentle parenting, like looking back and being like, oh, look at you. You really did do the best you could given with what you knew.
It's really hard to do, but
It
we
is.
need to remember to do that
It's so
daily.
hard. Yeah, totally.
I
Totally.
I most of my listeners should remember that I like to joke that I belong to the cult of Peloton. And it does feel
That's
like
a
a cult
good cult. Of
sometimes.
all the cults you could do, that's a good
Yeah.
one.
And the instructor in the class that I took this morning is in his 30s, and he had a stroke in his 20s or
Oh,
early 30s. And did he say it's been like 5 or 6 years? And he said it took forever to heal. And there's days that he just doesn't feel like the way he used to. He
no.
says, I can dwell on that, or I can just be the best I can be today. And I'm like, dang, I needed to hear that today. Like they always seem to come
Yeah.
up with some little
Yeah.
nugget where you're like, wait, I wish they had like the 30-second backup on the
Right.
class.
Repeat, repeat.
I don't need to do that Tabata again. I just need to
Yeah.
hear what he said again.
Yeah. We don't want to do the movement. We just want
Oh
to
yeah. I just
hear
want to
it.
hear the audio.
That's really
And
good.
yeah, that's why I say it's a cult, because they're so good at
Yeah.
connecting with people through a screen, and they
Yeah.
give these little nuggets because they don't always teach with people in the class. So
Mm.
it's just them and the cameras, which you know what that's like, but even better than like me, because I've learned how to connect through the camera on my computer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just amazing. And
Yeah.
it's, you know,
I think
it's,
that I love that you brought that up because it's one thing to talk about like acceptance with somebody else's illness in our lives or someone's death. So different when you're talking about this healthy young man who like unexpectedly has this medical, like a stroke. Like that's so frustrating. And like it would be really hard not to just be mad all the time, like at being limited when you're like, I'm doing all the right things. I'm like living the way I'm supposed to live, like, etc. Um, but it's so much about like, it's like, again, controlling what we can and accepting what we can't control. It goes back to that with everything.
well,
And we
this has
can't
been,
repeat the
nope,
statement on the
no,
Peloton
there's no
instructor.
backup button.
Darn it, can't control that either.
Oh, frustrating. Well, this has been fantastic. Um, the website for the movie is linked in the show notes, because
Yeah.
I'm assuming you don't know when it's coming out yet.
We're filming in February and I'm projecting probably a year for post-production. I wish I could magically edit it and make it come together within months of filming it. That's the hard part about the film industry is it requires a lot of patience.
So we're looking
But
at
yeah,
February of 2026. Good Lord. Why does that
I
sound like a
know.
fake year?
I know. But I do hope that people will like check in and stay tuned because we want to update the community. We have an email list, we have social media that I really want anyone who's interested in a film like this, like I want us to stay connected and build this community because number one is we're raising awareness and we're giving some hope and healing to anyone that understands the caregiving journey. But two, when we do have the film, I want everyone to be invited to come out to the theaters where we're screening. And it's going to be very exciting and we'd love to have everyone in the seats. So,
Well, you're not that far from me. And like I said, I have
yeah.
a hybrid and I have airline miles, although United from Sacramento to Oregon seems almost ridiculous. I'd probably take just as much time to fly as it would to drive
That's funny. Good.
between all the, get there to the airport and all that stuff. So I will do my best to be in one of those screenings.
Love it.
And there's lots of great theater up here in the Auburn, Grass Valley, Nevada City. Nevada City is a really unique, it's a tiny little town, but man, it's got a pretty good theater district. So
Oh,
if you need
that's
a place
good.
down here, you know where I'm
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to release it in as many theaters as possible. Be exciting.
Well, I do know. Well, I'm talking about live theater. You're talking about a movie. I'll have to
Yeah.
I'll have to mind my theater friends for
Yeah,
alternatives.
do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to learning more about the movie. Sounds fantastic. And I hope everybody stays tuned and make sure to check out the website and stay connected, because we need to support movies like this that tell more of the real stories than
Yeah.
we've been getting in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. I think TV and film can be healing when we see something we relate to on the screen and we're able to feel with people. It's a gift. So,
I agree. And I think more of that's coming. I've seen a
yeah,
lot more of it in
I
the
think so.
last 6 or 7 years than
Hmm.
ever before. But then again, is it because I've been paying attention to that type of
Yeah.
subject?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Fading Memories is also available wherever you get your podcasts.